guys, welcome to Lady Shuna. I am a new Tensura channel. In this video we will continue the chapter 1 of volume 19 of Tensura light novel. If you haven't watched the previous video, please feel free to visit my channel. The links can also be found in the description below. If you like this kind of content, then please consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel. All media used in this video are used in the purpose of entertainment and education, under the terms of fair use. All clips, images and music belongs to their respective owners. So without further ado, let's get into the video.
Rimuru couldn't help but be amazed at Rain, that he thought to himself.
This kid is incredible. Even in this situation, she was insisting that it was all her own achievements.
Until came to a consensus with himself, that maybe it's because Rain was a primordial demon after all, so her mental strength was no joke. Similar to Rain, Diablo also seemed to adhere to the theory, that as long as you didn't admit defeat, you hadn't lost. So, Rimuru thought that at some point that those two were similar at heart.
So, Diablo, I'm curious as well. I don't think you would give something to Rain for free, so what kind of a deal did you make?
Rimuru only wanted to pursue Diablo's involvement, so he'd let Guy to judge Rain's claim. Meanwhile, Diablo was slurring his words. It seems that he's thinking that he couldn't lie to his master, so that didn't last long. So, with the aid of Souei's persuasion, Diablo confessed that, in return for Rain's share of paintings, he had been supplying the items in question. Then, Rimuru was able to realize that the unknown artist, who was distributing his paintings was Rain, and that was why they couldn't trace her. It had also become clear to him that he was wrong in his wild guess, that Diablo could be an accomplice to the portrait crime. That's because Diablo was only supplying goods and it is a valid act, thus he could not blame him. However, Rimuru didn't intend to leave his portraits unattended, so he would let Souei deal with it.
Please rest assured, I have already ordered Sokka to search Diablo's room.
Isn't that a bit excessive?
No, it infringes upon his publicity rights and is a serious crime deserving of punishment. A search warrant has already been issued, so there are no problems.
While Diablo was crumbling in shock, Rimuru pretended not to see him, and just focus on being amazed with Souei's quick work. At the very same moment, Rain was finishing her explanation to Guy. Her explanations contained useful information, so it was both annoying and surprising to hear from Rimuru's perspective. She was able to tell them the location of the enemy's base, and the forces that had been gathered, although he was unsure how much of it could be trusted. Above all, Rimuru, who had just been listening to the conversation, turned to Rain when she provided a very important information at the very end.
That's how I got the information out of them. Then it seemed that the battle was over, and Pico said, "Oh, I was contacted by Feldway. He's leaving now, so I ended the girls' party. No, I ended the interrogation."
Rain's story was too critical to be ignored, setting aside the fact that her true feelings were gotten obvious, because it was Pico's reaction that was important. The reason was that Rimuru suddenly remembered that Leon had fallen to the enemy as a result of Michael's complete control, and Zelario had been taken over in the process, as confirmed according to Diablo's report. And yet, Pico and Gracia were not under control. Otherwise, it would be difficult to explain why they had been enjoying the girls' party until the very end, which brought him to a conclusion that Michael's control might not be effective in isolation. So because of Rain's story, Rimuru was able to draw a presumption that Michael's control was only effective when the object was recognized, whether it was through visibility or magic perception. In that case, there was a high possibility that Michael would not be able to determine whether the control had been established or not, if the person being controlled left his sphere of control. But if he periodically issued orders via telepathy net, and checked whether the orders were carried out properly or not, he might not have such suspicions. However, it would be possible to decide the result of the battle before the enemy could know, if Leon was secretly released on the battlefield where Michael was not present. Rimuru glanced at Guy, who was also looking at him as well, and he told him that Rain's achievements were significant, as to which Guy nodded reluctantly.
Yeah, she's a dumbass, and is useless during crucial times, but she also does things in ways I don't expect. I hate to admit it, but that's what she's done this time.
Despite Rimuru being hesitant to admit it either, he realized that there are indeed some people in this world that even when they look like they're fooling around, they are just naturally good at what they do, so they still end up getting results anyway, and recognizing the work of these so-called genius-type people would always be a test of ability to those who were in charge. Taking away the achievements of others would be a problem, but otherwise, they should be evaluated properly. Rain was listening to the conversation of Guy and Rimuru, and her eyes were moistened, as if she realized that she was going to be saved. Rimuru could even feel her gratitude towards him, even before she talked about it out loud. However, the moment was ruined, because Rain was still sitting on the floor like that, even if she was expressing words of gratitude towards Rimuru with such a firm expression.
You'll make Guy angry if you keep acting like that. You should reflect on yourself more.
Rimuru couldn't help but give her his sincere advice, but it doesn't change the fact that he still had to admit that an achievement was an achievement. Indeed, Rain's actions were not praiseworthy, but she did produce results. In that case, there was no need for further punishment. So, Rimuru suggested that they should just let Rain go, as to which Guy agreed. Thus, Rain's freedom was decided. After she was pardoned, Rain was congratulated by Misora and the others. Misery spoke to Rain in a dumbfounded tone, while bringing tea.
I admit that you are a child capable of many things, but I wish you would change your usual attitude a little more.
Rain was proud to hear that, and brag it to Misora. She told Misora that even Misery praised her because she's a capable woman, that even when she tries hiding her abilities, it can't help but come out in full force. As Rimuru listened to their exchange, he was once again proven that Rain was a no good, as to which Guy seemed to agree. Until recently, Rimuru had thought Rain was an excellent maid from the first few times he saw her, but she really must be a big deal to make Guy feel so troubled. While Guy and him were left feeling resigned, Rain and her subordinates were having a great time. Rimuru thinks that Misora spoiling Rain with a lot of praise always stir things up, which is the reason why the latter is always getting carried away and had grown up to be a no good. He was getting a sense of déjà vu, because this was just like how Trainee-san was with Ramirez. He also assumes that even if they re-educated Rain from now on, it seemed to be too late to correct her, so, at the very least, Rimuru decided to educate Ramirez, so that she would not become like Rain. And so, Rimuru internally summarized that the discussion itself went smoothly, and it was a good thing that they learned about the enemy situation. Vega, who was supposed to be one of Yuki's friends, seems to have gained power and become much more powerful. Ranga intervened just as Misora and the others were in danger, and somehow managed to fight him off. However, Vega had eaten the enemy named Oria that Kumara defeated, and rapidly healed his injuries and improved his fighting ability. The exact numbers were unknown, but if we compare only the existence values, he seems to be stronger than both Ranga and Kumara. He apparently had a vulgar character, flattering to the strong and intimidating to the weak. However, he also seemed to have excellent survival instincts, having survived to this point and acquiring great power, despite all odds. My impression of him was that he would be a very troublesome opponent. Incidentally, Oria had apparently been able to create mythical-grade equipment with her own skill. Unlike Velgrund, Oria seems to have only materialized her weapons, but they hadn't disappeared when she was eaten by Vega. This was the testimony of Fran and Kazona, the knight captains under Leon, and I also checked with Kumara, so I believed it to be correct. In other words, Vega must have inherited the weapon creation skill. This kind of problem was the type that became more dangerous if left unattended, so I thought that it would be better to deal with him as soon as possible. I, myself, am a similar type of person, so this was something I felt with a real sense of reality. The warrior whom Souei defeated by surprise was named Arios. Unfortunately, he had escaped before he could be finished off. It was a rare mistake for Souei, but it seemed to be unavoidable after hearing his story. After all, there was a user of instantaneous movement on the enemy side. Khan also testified to this. It was not magic, but a skill. The ability to jump through space without any preliminary movement was troublesome because it was difficult to measure the strength numerically. If she had mastered this skill, we might be caught off guard. The fact that we had found out in advance that there was such a person on the enemy's side was a big gain. The girl's name was Mai Furuki, and it seems that we would have to rethink our strategy to take her skill into account. So far, those 4 people were the weakest of the enemies, but they still had given us a lot of trouble. Some of them, like Rain's drinking buddies Pico and Gracia, had been reluctant to follow, but it seems that Michael's ultimate dominion had turned them into our enemies. Well, I'm sure Seal-san would be able to something about it, but that would require a certain procedure. There was still the possibility that the control could be broken by one's own will, so we would have to carefully assess the enemy. And then there were the serious enemies. Velzard, Zelario, and Feldway. There was no other word to use for them but threatening. I had actually fought Feldway, so I understood how strong he was. He didn't seem like he was serious about it, so I really thought it would be best to leave it to Diablo. And so, I would postpone my talk about Feldway for later.
By the way, Guy-san, is Velzard-san going to be okay?
Bastard, you didn't even come to help. You're talking as if you're somebody else.
No, that was more of a lover's quarrel, and I didn't think a third party was needed.
Quit screwing around.
You know what they say, not even a dog will bite into a lover's quarrel. If I say this out loud, he might get seriously angry, so I told him so in my mind. When I asked him what he really thought about everything, he replied as if he was fed up with it all.
Well, you're not completely out of your mind. It feels like she's full of pent-up resentment, and her main goal is to harass me.
It seems that Guy had been desperately trying not to let this country disappear.